The day Daniel Carter walked out of the company with a cardboard box in his arms, everyone in the room thought he had lost. For 5 years, he had been the company's #1 salesperson, breaking records nobody believed could be broken. He had brought in millions, saved struggling accounts, trained new employees, and stayed late when everyone else had gone home. But when the chairman stood on a stage and announced that his own daughter would become the company's new vice president of sales, Daniel realized something painful: 5 years of loyalty could disappear in a single sentence. He quietly placed his resignation letter on the chairman's desk, picked up his belongings, and walked away without asking for recognition. 1 year later, the same people who watched him leave would discover just how badly they had underestimated him. Daniel had never dreamed of becoming a top salesman. He was a single father who had learned to survive one difficult day at a time. Every morning, he woke before sunrise, prepared breakfast, packed a lunch for his young daughter Emma, and drove through traffic toward the office. His wife had passed away years earlier, leaving him with a little girl who depended on him for everything. Daniel carried that responsibility quietly. At work, nobody heard him complain. When sales targets became impossible, he stayed late. When customers threatened to leave, he drove across the city to meet them personally. When younger employees failed, he never embarrassed them. He simply taught them what he had learned the hard way. Over 5 years, Daniel became the company's most valuable salesperson. His numbers were not just good, they were extraordinary. He brought in major clients, rescued accounts that were about to walk away, and built relationships based on trust rather than pressure. Customers often told management that Daniel was the reason they continued doing business with the company. Yet Daniel never demanded a promotion. His only goal was simple: earn enough to give Emma a safe life and a better future. Then came the annual company celebration. The entire office gathered in a beautifully decorated conference hall overlooking the city. Everyone expected Daniel's name to be announced. Some employees even whispered that he would finally become director of sales. Daniel sat near the front, wearing the same dark suit he had worn to countless meetings, while Emma's photograph rested inside his wallet. The chairman stepped onto the stage with a proud smile and announced a major leadership change. Everyone applauded when he introduced his daughter, Victoria, as the company's new vice president of sales. Victoria was intelligent, confident, and clearly capable, but she had never worked in the sales department. She had spent years studying abroad and had recently returned to the company. The chairman praised her potential, then briefly thanked the existing sales team. Daniel waited. He waited for his name. It never came. The applause continued, but something inside him became strangely quiet. He looked around the room and saw people who knew exactly what he had accomplished. Some avoided his eyes. Others looked uncomfortable. Daniel understood immediately. This was not about performance. It was about family. He didn't make a scene. He didn't complain. He simply walked back to his office, closed the door, and stared at the framed photograph of Emma on his desk. He thought about every night he had missed dinner, every weekend he had worked, every customer he had fought to keep. Then he took out a sheet of paper and wrote a short resignation letter. Before leaving, Daniel stopped by the chairman's office. He placed the letter on the desk and thanked him for the opportunity. The chairman seemed surprised and tried to convince him to stay, but Daniel had already made his decision. He wasn't leaving because he hated the company. He was leaving because he finally understood that his future could not depend on someone else recognizing his worth. If you believe people deserve kindness, second chances, and the opportunity to prove themselves, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel for more YK stories that remind us never to give up. The next morning, Daniel started over. He had no impressive office, no assistant, and no company car. He rented a small workspace and began contacting old customers. At first, many were surprised to hear from him. Some were cautious. Others immediately trusted him. Daniel discovered that something followed him when he left the company: his reputation. Within months, he was helping small businesses improve their sales systems. He wasn't chasing huge commissions anymore. He was building something of his own. He hired 2 people who had been overlooked at their previous jobs and trained them with the same patience he had always shown others. Meanwhile, things inside his old company began to change. Victoria struggled. She was intelligent, but sales was different from boardroom strategy. Several major clients complained about poor communication. One important account refused to renew its contract. Another asked specifically whether Daniel could handle their business again. The chairman finally realized the truth: he had mistaken a position for leadership and a family connection for experience. But the biggest shock came when the chairman learned what Daniel had built in just 1 year. The small company Daniel had started had grown into a respected sales consulting firm. Several of his former clients had followed him. More importantly, Daniel had built a team that trusted him. His business wasn't successful because he had taken anything from his old company. It was successful because he had taken everything he had learned and used it to create something better. One afternoon, the chairman visited Daniel's new office. There was no luxury furniture. No marble floors. Just a bright room, a small team, and a photograph of Emma sitting beside Daniel's desk. The chairman looked around and finally understood why Daniel had succeeded. Daniel hadn't become successful after leaving because he was lucky. He had succeeded because, for the first time, he was working somewhere his value wasn't measured by who his father knew, who his family was, or whose name appeared on a company certificate. The chairman apologized. Not because Daniel demanded it, but because he finally understood what he had lost. Daniel accepted the apology. He didn't return to the company. Instead, he offered to help them rebuild their sales department. Not as an employee, but as a consultant. He even offered Victoria a chance to learn from him if she was willing to start from the ground up. A year earlier, Daniel had walked out carrying a cardboard box. Now he walked through the same company doors carrying something far more valuable, proof that being overlooked is not the same as being defeated. That evening, Daniel returned home to Emma. She ran toward him, and he dropped his briefcase to lift her into his arms. She asked how his day had been, and Daniel smiled. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was chasing success. He felt like he had finally found it. Sometimes life doesn't reject you because you're not good enough. Sometimes it removes you from a place because you're capable of building something greater somewhere else. Daniel lost a promotion, but he gained independence. He lost a title, but he discovered his true value. And most importantly, he showed his daughter that dignity is worth more than recognition. If this story touched your heart, please don't just watch and leave. Like the video, share it with someone who has ever felt overlooked, and subscribe so more people can hear stories about courage, kindness, and second chances. And before you go, comment, "I know my worth," if you've ever had to walk away from something that didn't appreciate you. Because sometimes, the door that closes behind you isn't the end of your story. Sometimes, it's the door that finally leads you to the life you were meant to build.